Well, first of all, thank you for inviting us into your homes over the past 3 months as we've explored remote workflows for media and entertainment professionals. And thank you for sharing all your success stories and for all your really valuable feedback and your questions. We are completely floored that so many of you are watching this series, and we're gratified that you've shown us how you're learning from this series and taking some of the concepts we've discussed and putting them into action for your own workflows. If you don't yet know me, and this is your first episode of Workflow from Home, my name is Michael, and I'm talking to you from my home in Los Angeles. Throughout the past 11 episodes, we've investigated and unpacked 11 different segments of the production and post-production processes, and we've heard from industry experts who are successfully deploying custom workflows that have empowered them to keep delivering new content while working with distributed teams, oftentimes with virtually the same level of productivity. But the story we haven't told yet is how an end-to-end remote production can be created. And since you've asked for an analysis on how a distributed team can use all the technology we've discussed together so far, we thought we'd give you a proof of concept. So today, we're turning the cameras on ourselves to show you how our team at Frame.io has applied everything that we've learned together and pushed our own technology to experiment with a few new workflows that we hadn't tried before. This episode serves as a snapshot of some of the ways in which crews and producers, directors, editors, and post facilities can increase efficiencies no matter where they're working from. Welcome to the making of Workflow from Home. Here's the lav, here's the boom, and there's the camera. Here we go, Vince. We didn't fully grasp the totality of the situation, but our last day in the offices was Friday, March 13th. Several weeks prior to this, our CEO, Emery Wells, had anticipated stay-at-home orders and began migrating the entire company to a distributed teams workflow with every employee working from home. On March 18th, Emery released a public statement about our plan to work remotely and to offer the Frame.io platform to anyone who needed it. Hundreds of individuals and companies were able to join Frame.io completely free of charge, and existing customers were given increase in collaboration seats as well as additional cloud storage. Then our leadership team thought that in addition to sharing our technology, we should also share our knowledge and experience as it relates to remote workflows. So we quickly decided that the best way to do this would be to put together a series of informational programs. We assembled a production team. We began outlining topics to cover, and on March 23rd, a mere 10 days after we all said goodbye to each other in the office, we released the first episode and Workflow from Home was born. In our initial episode, it definitely had sort of a garage band kind of feel, but as we continued to make new episodes, we continued to improve our process and our final product. There are a lot of contributors to the Workflow from Home series across many departments at Frame.io, but our core production team is made up of 8 principal contributors working from home in different parts of the country, each representing a different facet of the production. Every single day, we get together on a Zoom call for a face-to-face update on the status of the current episode, brainstorm topics and ideas for upcoming episodes, and address details for upcoming releases. Part of what makes Workflow from Home special is that when we started this series, we only had 2 episodes clearly in mind. We didn't know how many episodes we were ultimately going to make, or what topics we were ultimately going to cover, or what order they would ultimately go in. That's why we relied a lot on you to help guide us forward based on your suggestions and your feedback. But we also used data to support how we proceeded. I can't stress enough how valuable this data ended up being. Emily Kalin, based in New York, works on our growth team in data and analytics. First, she helped us conduct a series of industry surveys to see what the market was feeling. Then, using a methodical approach to how and where we rolled out each episode, she was able to capture information from viewers who watched the series and interacted with the Frame.io platform. Similar to broadcast ratings analytics, these findings helped us identify topics to explore and sequence them from week to week. Those insights were key to helping us stay focused on what the market was telling us during a period in which timing was of critical importance. It's important to note that everyone on our Workflow from Home team also has a full plate of work outside of this production. So in order to keep pace with a weekly Workflow from Home series, we had to set up a killer workflow and a production schedule in order to make all of our deadlines. What we eventually refined into a well-oiled machine goes something like this. I shoot my on-camera portions on Sundays. We have a parallel track of offline editing and animation creation that starts on Monday. During the week, we make comments and we write the blog entry for the current episode and scripts for the next episodes. We do the editorial turnover on Friday, we perform our online, color, and sound pass over the weekend, we QC and make any final tweaks on Monday, and release the episode online on Tuesday. Episodes range from about 12 to 15 minutes each, with more than 60% of the time filled with custom animations and graphics. What's important here is that because we were in different time zones and adding the series to our daily workload, we needed to leverage an optimized cloud-based workflow to keep us on track. When it comes to the best writing tool for speed and collaboration, we use the program Quip to act as our show Bible. Lisa McNamara, who's based in Oregon, starts writing in a shared Quip doc that 23 other people at Frame.io can access. There we can not only all collaborate and make notes, we can also tag each other when we have questions. What we like about Quip is that it automatically builds an outline, which makes it easy to sort, search, and jump between episodes. Graphics and stills and other references can be inserted directly into the Quip doc so everyone can get a sense of the direction of each episode and the series as a whole. Shooting is a subject that a lot of people were asking about a couple of months back, especially those who were creating their own shows for conducting interviews from home. So we did a deep dive into tips and tricks for recording yourself or remote interviewees and dedicated all of episode 6 to examining this workflow. You can watch the full episode to get the specifics on all the techniques that we outlined, but briefly, we shoot my segments of the shows in 8K on a red helium at 9:1 compression in Log3G10. One of the things that we've been working on at Frame.io is getting editable proxy files directly into the cloud. So I've actually been testing a prototype of that workflow for this series, and it means that my shots are instantly and automatically delivered to the editor, which is sort of an industry first. We're using gamma encoded files, so our editor immediately receives color-corrected 1080p 2398 proxy files in the Frame.io cloud for the offline that will eventually be matched back to the original 8K raw files for the online. Vince Michelli is a freelance editor and director based in Los Angeles who came in to help us by dedicating all of his time to editing this series. We decided to use our own hybrid cloud workflow and chose Final Cut Pro 10 as the NLE because it's able to do a few things that no other NLE can. First, I've been pushing the benefits of camera-generated proxy workflows since 2015 with the Panavision DXL and DXL2 cameras. Final Cut Pro is optimized to edit natively with H.264 and H.265 files, so essentially my camera video output in a way is directly connected to Vince's Final Cut computer. The Frame.io extension lives within Final Cut Pro 10, so every time a new asset is generated, Vince gets a notification and can instantly preview and pull that asset into his project library for the most seamless hybrid cloud workflow. So here I am in Vince's Final Cut timeline, ready for editing. Pretty cool, huh? That'll make sense in just a second, but first, let me tell you, for all the questions and concerns that this workflow will certainly invite, once you start collaborating this way, you can't go back. And it's why camera-to-cloud proxy systems is how everyone will work in just a few short years. So we want to demonstrate that. In fact, check this out. I'm going to cut here, and I've got B-roll running on my iPhone here. Here's Vince. This is Vince, the editor. He's cutting in his space. I'm in my home, and we're communicating through a Zoom feed here. And then Vince is also showing us his Final Cut screen so we can see his timeline, and he's got a B-roll camera as well. So we can see the whole picture. Our objective here is to show in real time how you can connect a camera automatically through the Frame.io cloud system into a cutting room without anything else. It's all automatic. And that's actually one of the other reasons we chose Final Cut. It's because Final Cut also supports HEVC and H.264 files, which are GOP codecs, but they can behave like intra-frame codecs. So even though you're working with a web streaming optimized form, it looks as good as ProRes or DNX when it's well encoded. It has the same file name and the same time code, so you can hook that all together. So here we go. We try to transmit this file right to Vince. Vince, did we make it into your timeline?
Let's check it out.
So here I am in Vince's Final Cut timeline, ready for editing. Pretty cool, huh? The next part is really powerful. As soon as Vince gets my footage, he starts building a radio edit in Final Cut Pro and identifies through title cards the name and description of an animation. The Final Cut Frame.io integration allows Vince to export and upload edits directly into Frame.io in a single process. Once the file is online, we use a powerful form of organization through range-based tagging. Vince navigates to each element in the episode and tags them using frame-accurate, range-based comments along with the type of element using hashtags such as animation or graphics. Vince also tags a person so that they get a unique notification for their assignment. What's really significant about this is that we don't need to keep a separate spreadsheet for the external elements because Frame.io organizes everything just as a spreadsheet would, only it has more functionality and flexibility. By working this way, we can see how many elements are in the episode as depicted by the total comments, we can sort by the type of element that needs to be created, we can export a table as a database in a CSV, or we can share a PDF with notes, timecodes, and thumbnails. This turns Frame.io into a database with a sound and video reference track for every contributor to know exactly what needs to be done without sending a single email. Personally speaking, this technique is an entirely new way that I've never worked before, and it became the core reason we could expedite so many simultaneous assignments without tripping up. What's more, it wasn't until we wrote the script for this workflow analysis that we realized we never sent a single email in making this series. Imagine a multi-department series with thousands of assets that's constantly up to date with specific assignments, reviews, and revisions, all managed without email. Because different people learn in different ways, a key part of each episode is creating the animations that serve as visual diagrams for the sometimes complicated concepts that we've addressed. The first step in this process is that our New York-based animator, Abby, reads the script in the Quip doc so she can start thinking through what might be best served by an animation for each episode. What's great about doing this in Frame.io is that we start by creating a team for the entire Workflow from Home series. Then we create individual projects for each episode. Within every project, we set up the same folder structure to keep things organized and compartmentalized. We have folders that contain the dailies, music, elements, edits, original camera files, and masters. Within the elements folder, we have a subfolder including a directory for Abby's animations. From there, Abby creates sketches and storyboards, and she and Vince will go back and forth as she works in After Effects, which also integrates directly with Frame.io. Next, she'll create a rough animatic at 1080 H.264 and give that to Vince to drop into his cut. As the animations become more defined and refined, she'll drop them into a folder, and Vince will get a notification that there's a new version to drop into the cut. Conversely, if anyone leaves a comment in the animation, Abby will get a notification. It's all completely seamless and iterative. And thanks to version stacking, there's never any confusion about what the latest version of an animation is and what's in the cut. When all the animation notes have been addressed, Abby renders the final animations in 4K ProRes for the online. Feedback is always an essential part of the editorial process, and it can sometimes be the hardest part, especially for the offline editor. For one thing, it's really hard when you've spent a lot of time on a cut only to get a ton of notes to address from several different people all at once. The notes can be anywhere from confusing to vague or even contradictory, and trying to sort through them and address them in a way that makes everyone happy can certainly be a challenge we're all familiar with. But as we explained in episode 11, it's why Frame.io was created in the first place. It was specifically designed to allow anyone who needed to give feedback on a cut the ability to do so directly on the video, frame accurately, which eliminates any ambiguity in communicating exactly what you want the editor or colorist or animator or VFX artist to do in terms of changes or adjustments. Now, a lot of people challenge us that it's harder to leave feedback on a video than it is to just talk about what's working or not working on the phone. In episode 10, we heard some really good thoughts on synchronous versus asynchronous review from the colorists at Light Iron. But when it came to commenting in this series, through the 11 episodes that we've done, our small team left close to 1,500 comments. Now that may sound like a recipe for drowning an editor in notes, but Vince, who was initially concerned about this problem, later shared that this fluid approach of centralized, asynchronous, spontaneous commenting actually ended up making him more productive. First, Vince didn't have the lag time of waiting for notes to be written, organized, and then sent by individual parties. Second, the Frame.io extension in Final Cut Pro has a feature called Presence, which we first showed in episode 11. It allows the editor to monitor the status of an external review of the edit in real time, which opens up a whole new way of communicating. For example, when our New York-based producer, Andrew Gomez, was in the cut and leaving comments, Vince could see them as Andrew was writing them. What Vince discovered is that having the notes right there in the edit as we were leaving them made them easier to understand, and what's more significant, because everyone could see each other's notes, we could arrive at a consensus and a solution in less time that everyone was happy with, and then we could move on. It's basically a new kind of workflow, and one that all of us in this series has said will change the way we work from here on out. And it builds upon what the Light Iron colorist said in episode 10 and Zoic's Andrew Orloff said in episode 8. What we're describing here is not exactly synchronous collaboration, but it's not exactly asynchronous either, because we're able to capture a synchronous moment in an asynchronous form. Final Cut's Frame.io presence extension is essentially inventing a new kind of workflow that is semi-synchronous. In other words, semi-sync has the benefits of documented and time-coded specific notes within a cut, but delivered in a more live, synchronous experience, thus allowing Vince to manage and address the comments more easily, and in some cases instantly, without having to track anything manually. Semi-sync is something entirely new that this cloud workflow just gave us. Another key reason that we chose Final Cut Pro as our NLE is because it's so easy to go from offline to Final Conform. This meant we didn't have to wait for a lock cut to actually start the online. The Final Cut Pro 10 database allows me to relink the H.264 camera proxy files back to the original Helium files, which we take into Resolve for a color correction pass on the live action interviews. Then that round trips back into Final Cut 10, where it's all reconformed in 4K ProRes HQ in UHD. I use the new Frame.io transfer tool, in which I upload an XML from the edit and then download all the relative elements I need from the Frame.io cloud for the final online local to my G-Speed shuttle. This allows me to work a hybrid workflow and limit only relevant media to live on my drive. After that, I use the Logic engine within Final Cut Pro 10 to do audio sweetening and the final mix. Since many of our interviews and our guest industry experts are shot on their phones in their living rooms and home offices, the audio can be compromised. Because Final Cut Pro 10 has best-in-class audio mixing features, this is another important aspect that brought a significant benefit to the offline and online processes by using the Final Cut Pro ecosystem. The next step in our process is to have Eagle Eye Ben Bailey in New Jersey perform the final QC. And here's the thing, no matter how careful we are or how many of us have gone through the cut, Ben always sees something that we didn't. I highly recommend getting an Eagle Eye of your own. Since we didn't go through a normal QC house for this series delivery, Ben served this important role. Once the video is finished, we prepare it to launch into the wild. Because different parts of our audience consume the content in different ways, we wanted to support individual preferences. Lisa and Ben create a written version for people who like to read the information, which is posted on our blog along with guides and tutorials like how to set up a remote Resolve grading session in episode 9. Other people may like to binge it, so we created our own series microsite. And some people like to share the videos within their network, so we publish each episode on YouTube as well. Every week, just prior to launch, Megan Stanford in Phoenix, Arizona, puts together a team launch document that gets us all organized. She makes sure that we know what all the deliverables are, where they'll appear, what time they'll launch, builds and distributes hyperlinks, and manages distributed responsibilities. Megan also makes sure that everyone in the company is aware of the launches and where they can find the content so they can help spread the word. We also produce short promos for each episode in various aspect ratios across all of our social media channels, which brings us back to the value of gathering data. Because we have solid analytics, we're able to strategize our distribution and make sure that the right audience is discovering the right content. Then, based on each week's performance, we can more flexibly strategize what topics we should cover next, which inspires the birth of new episodic topics, and then the cycle repeats. As we touched on earlier, we were actually floored when we started to see the numbers coming in around how many people were actually watching the series and sharing it, and most importantly, really using the information. So far, over the 11 episodes of this series, we have over 500,000 visits to the remote workflow landing page and garnered more than 3 million impressions. But here's what I find the most gratifying about those numbers. Sometimes I'm just working away and I'll get a text from someone or a message on my Instagram instant messenger or a tweet from someone who just needed to tell me that they watched an episode of Workflow from Home and tried something out that they hadn't tried before, and it helped them solve a problem that they've been having. And that's the kind of stuff that just makes all of this worthwhile. I mean, we kind of pulled this series out of nowhere, and to have it come together in a way that was meaningful for our industry is truly the ultimate reward. To say that we learned a lot in this process of making the Workflow from Home series would be a major understatement. It's funny because when you're creating a product like Frame.io, you think you know all the ways that it's valuable. But until you really put it through new paces of an actual use case, you don't always know how much you've gotten right or what areas need additional development in order to make the entire product more powerful. So while we started out thinking that we'd share our knowledge with you, the truth is that by making this series and discussing your workflows, we actually know so much more now than we did when we started. I've learned far more about remote workflows than I could possibly summarize here. How our entire community will work as we go forward will significantly change as a result of this entire experience. So we hope that you'll come back for our next and final episode of the Workflow from Home series, where we're gonna take a look at what we've all discovered in our journey together and use everything that we've learned to make some predictions and conclusions about what the future of cloud-based workflows will ultimately be like.